The morning sun glinted off the Derby trophy as I watched my father hand over Thunder, my champion thoroughbred, to Marcus Reynolds. Dad's shoulders relaxed visibly when Reynolds tore up the gambling IOUs. Thunder's confused eyes found mine as they loaded him into the trailer, his chestnut coat gleaming despite the betrayal unfolding around him. He whinnied softly, a sound that would have broken my heart in my previous life. "You're surprisingly calm about this, Ellie," Dad said later, relief evident in his voice, as we stood in the suddenly emptier stable. "I promised I'd buy you another horse soon, once things turn around." I smiled thinly, fingering the business card in my pocket, the one from Bloodstock Auctions I'd slipped to Reynolds before he left. "Don't worry about it, Dad. Some things are more valuable than horses." Dad didn't notice my phone buzzing with a text from my silent partner. "Auction lot secured. Operation Homecoming begins." He patted my shoulder awkwardly before heading to the house, already making calls to his bookie. I remained in the stable, breathing in the familiar scent of hay and leather, knowing this was just the first move in a game he didn't realize we were playing. I wasn't always this calculating. Before the accident, I was just Ellie Harrington, a rising equestrian star with Olympic dreams. Everyone said I had my mother's natural seat and hands, gentle but firm, understanding the horse beneath me as an extension of myself. Mom had been a champion before cancer took her when I was 14. After she died, riding became my connection to her memory. The day of the accident remains crystal clear, unlike most memories from my first life. It was a crisp autumn morning at our family stables. I was training on a new jump course Dad had designed, supposedly safer than the previous one. The standards gleamed with fresh paint, the poles perfectly balanced. At least, that's how they appeared. I remember Thunder gathering beneath me for the triple combination, his powerful haunches propelling us up and over the first element. Then the sickening crack as the second jump collapsed under us. The poles hadn't been secured properly, a detail I would only learn much later. I remember flying through the air, the ground rushing up, then nothing. 6 months in a coma, they told me. A miracle recovery, the doctors called it. What they didn't know, what no one could possibly understand, was that I awoke with memories of another timeline, another life already lived, knowledge I shouldn't have had, awareness of betrayals yet to come, and a strange medallion around my neck that no one could explain, a silver horse in full gallop that seemed to warm against my skin when I made certain decisions. "You had it clutched in your hand when they brought you in," the nurse had explained, puzzled. "Your father thought it might have been your mother's, but he didn't recognize it." Of course he didn't. My mother had never owned such a piece, at least not in the life I remembered. The stable yard felt different after my return, shadows longer, conversations hushed when I approached. I noticed things my pre-rebirth self had missed, the way Emma, my best friend and riding rival, never met my eyes when discussing the accident. How Tyler, my boyfriend of 3 years, gave vague explanations about the stable finances. Vanessa's smirk when visitors expressed concern about my recovery. My father was the biggest change. James Harrington had once been the most respected trainer on the East Coast circuit. Now he moved like a hunted man, jumping at unexpected noises, checking his phone obsessively. The gambling wasn't new, he'd always liked a little flutter on the races, but the desperation was. "It's just temporary cash flow issues," he'd assure me, even as I noticed equipment disappearing, staff positions left unfilled. "We'll be back on top before you know it." I smiled and nodded, playing the dutiful daughter still foggy from her injury, all while I watched and planned and remembered. Dad's sale of Thunder was the final confirmation I needed. In my previous life, I'd died never knowing the full extent of his betrayal. How he'd mortgaged everything my mother left us. How he'd forged her signature on documents to access my trust fund. How he'd gambled away our legacy one race at a time. This time would be different. "I had no choice, Ellie girl," Dad said, the evening after Thunder left, using the childhood nickname that once made me feel safe. Reynolds was calling in debts I couldn't cover any other way. It was Thunder or the South Paddock. The lie came easily to him now. I knew he'd already remortgaged the South Paddock 3 months ago. "I understand," I said softly, pouring him another whiskey. "Thunder was just a horse. We can always get another." His relief was palpable, shoulders slumping as tension drained away. "That's my girl," Always practical, just like your mother. A flash of guilt crossed his face at invoking her name, but it passed quickly. Too quickly. I've been thinking, I continued, keeping my voice casual. We should focus on the Hampton show next month. Stella has real potential in the jumper classes. Stella was our second best mare, a gray beauty with surprising power for her delicate frame. Dad looked momentarily startled, as if he'd forgotten we still had other horses. The Hampton show? Yes, that's a good idea. Entry fees aren't too steep. He patted my hand. You're taking all this so well, Ellie. After the accident, I worried you might be different. The accident changed my perspective, I said truthfully. I see things more clearly now. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already contacted Marcus Reynolds through an intermediary, offering him double what he'd paid my father for Thunder. Reynolds was a businessman first. Sentiment didn't enter into it. That night, I transferred funds from my secret account, money I'd been quietly accumulating by placing bets on races whose outcomes I already knew from my previous life. Small bets at first, then larger ones as I built capital. I'd created a shell corporation called Kingsley Farms, named after my mother's maiden name. On paper, it was owned by a network of trusts that would take a forensic accountant months to unravel. In reality, it was all mine. The next morning, I drove to a small training facility 2 counties over. Maria Santos was exercising a young gelding in the ring, her compact frame moving in perfect harmony with the horse. She'd been my mother's assistant trainer before Dad fired her for questioning his methods after Mom died. Miss Harrington, she said, surprised when she saw me. I heard about your accident. You look well. Better than expected, I agreed, and please, call me Ellie. We talked for an hour, circling subjects carefully until I was certain she harbored no loyalty to my father. Then I made her an offer. Become head trainer for Kingsley Farms, starting with one very special horse being purchased at auction the following week. Why me? She asked bluntly. Your father made sure my reputation was questionable at best. Because my mother trusted you, I said simply, and because you were right about his training methods. Her dark eyes studied me. You've changed. Dying will do that to a person, I replied, touching the medallion at my throat. Even if it doesn't stick. Maria agreed to my terms and Operation Homecoming officially began. While Thunder settled into his new home with Maria, I quietly documented all of Dad's financial mismanagement. I hired a private investigator who specialized in forensic accounting to trace every forged signature, every misappropriated fund, the evidence mounted in a secure cloud account organized and damning. Dad noticed nothing, too consumed with placing bets with his momentary windfall from Thunder's sale. He lost most of it within 2 weeks. Just a bad streak, he muttered when I found him staring bleakly at his phone one night. It'll turn around. Of course it will, I soothed, even as I forwarded more bank statements to my investigator. The regional championship was held at Bergman Farms, a sprawling equestrian center that attracted competitors from 3 states. Dad and I arrived early, Stella safely stabled the night before. He seemed almost his old self that morning, confident and charming as he greeted old colleagues. Harrington! Boomed Marcus Reynolds, approaching us by the practice ring. Your girl's looking good out there. Dad stiffened slightly. Which girl, my daughter or the mare? Reynolds laughed, oblivious to the tension. Both, I suppose, though I meant the mare. That Thunder of yours is something special, too. Best purchase I've made in years. You still have him, then? Dad asked carefully. Reynolds looked confused. No, sold him at auction last month. Got a nice profit, too. Some new operation. Kingsley Farms, I think? They've been buying quality stock all over the circuit. I kept my expression neutral as Dad's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Kingsley, you say? Never heard of them. New money, Reynolds shrugged. They're in the program today. A bay thoroughbred in the open jumper division. Dad seized a program from a nearby table, flipping through it frantically. I excused myself, saying I needed to check on Stella. Instead, I texted Maria. He knows. Stick to the plan. The announcement for the open jumper division came just as I returned to Dad's side. We stood at the rail as the competitors entered the ring for inspection. Then Thunder appeared, his chestnut coat gleaming like burnished copper. Maria Santos sitting tall in the saddle. They wore Kingsley Farms colors, dark green and silver, my mother's favorites. Dad went pale, clutching the rail. That can't be. Looks like Thunder's moved up in the world, I observed mildly. He turned to me, suspicion blooming. Did you know about this? Before I could answer, the competition began. Thunder and Maria moved like water flowing over stones, each jump higher and cleaner than the last. It was a magnificent round, drawing gasps and applause from the crowd. When they were announced as winners, Maria removed her helmet and beamed at the crowd. A reporter thrust a microphone at her. Amazing performance! Thunder seems to have improved dramatically under Kingsley Farms training. What's your secret? Maria's eyes found mine briefly in the crowd before she answered. Ethical training methods make all the difference. This horse was rescued from a desperate situation, headed for a kill auction after his previous owner was done with him. Some horses just need someone to believe in them. Dad's face darkened with rage. That's a lie, he hissed. Reynolds wouldn't sell to a slaughter buyer. Reynolds sold to the highest bidder, I corrected quietly. He didn't ask questions about the next stop. The drive home was tense, Dad alternating between angry muttering and suspicious glances at me. It wasn't until we were back at the stables that he finally confronted me. You had something to do with this, didn't you? He demanded, blocking my path to the house. Don't lie to me, Ellie. I looked at him thoughtfully. Does it matter who saved him from being sold for meat after Reynolds was done with him? Of course it matters. That horse is worth a fortune with the right training. And that woman, Santos, she has no right to imply I mistreated him. Did she mention you? I asked innocently. I don't recall hearing your name. He ran his hands through his graying hair, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. You don't understand. I'm in trouble, Ellie. Real trouble. Gambling debts again? It's worse this time. He slumped onto a hay bale. I owe people you don't want to owe. They're not patient like Reynolds. I waited, letting the silence stretch. If Kingsley Farms would consider, I could sign over my half of the property to them. For the right price, they could own a historic training facility instead of whatever nouveau establishment they're building. You'd sell your half of Mom's legacy? I kept my voice even. To save the rest of it, yes. To save us. He looked up desperately. You could talk to them. After your accident, people in the industry would listen to you. They'd see it as a heartwarming story, the injured champion helping her father. The moment had come sooner than I'd expected, but I was prepared. I withdrew an envelope from my jacket pocket and placed it in his hands. What's this? He asked. A letter from Mother's estate lawyer. I've discovered some irregularities in the trust administration. Specifically, several signatures that don't match her handwriting. The blood drained from his face as he scanned the documents. You'll need more than my intercession, I told him, walking away. You'll need a good lawyer. The fallout was swift, but controlled, exactly as I'd planned. Dad moved into the guest house while legal proceedings began. He alternated between begging my forgiveness and accusing me of betrayal, rich coming from him. I let the lawyers handle most interactions, focusing instead on rebuilding my strength for competition. Tyler became more present during this period, suddenly attentive after months of distraction. He took over dealing with vendors, managing staff, handling the accounts, to spare me the stress. I thanked him tearfully, playing the traumatized daughter, grateful for support. Emma, too, circled closer, offering to help me regain my confidence through coaching sessions. You just need to get back on the horse, she'd say, without apparent irony. I'll be right there beside you. I accepted all help with demure gratitude, all while setting my next plan in motion. Small cameras appeared in the stable office and training rings. Simple security measures, I explained, after valuable equipment went missing. In reality, they captured Tyler's late-night excavations through financial records and Emma's careful inspections of tack before my practice sessions. It took 3 weeks to gather everything I needed. Tyler's systematic embezzlement documented in spreadsheets he thought were deleted, emails between him and Emma discussing the accident and the need to keep Ellie in the dark, footage of Emma subtly loosening a girth before I mounted for practice. While I collected evidence, I also contacted our stable clients individually, expressing concerns about the atmosphere following my accident. I offered them discounted board and training if they transferred to a fresh facility, Kingsley Farms, naturally. Two-thirds agreed immediately. The final piece fell into place when I discovered which substances Emma had been using on her competition horse, illegal performance enhancers that would disqualify her from her hard-won sponsorships if discovered. An anonymous tip to the testing authorities would have been simple, but I preferred a more public accounting. I organized a fundraiser ostensibly for my Recovery Foundation, a genuine charity supporting injured riders, though one that served my purposes perfectly. Everyone who mattered in the regional equestrian community attended, including representatives from Emma's sponsors and the regional governing body. Tyler helped organize the event, proud to stand beside me as I gave my speech, thanking everyone for their support during my recovery. His smile froze when the presentation screen behind me shifted from generic thank you slides to detailed financial records, his meticulous documentation of years of theft from the Harrington accounts. As you can see, I continued smoothly, my accident revealed more damage than just the physical injury. It exposed a pattern of betrayal by those closest to me. The screen changed again, showing the emails between Tyler and Emma. She still doesn't suspect anything, I read aloud. As long as she doesn't remember the details of the accident, we're in the clear. Gasps rippled through the audience. Emma stood rigidly by the bar, champagne flute clutched in a white-knuckled grip. Tyler stepped toward me, face contorted. Ellie, this is crazy. These are taken out of context. Is this also out of context? I asked as the screen showed footage of Emma sabotaging my equipment before my practice sessions. Or perhaps you'd like to explain the stable accounts you've been draining for the past 3 years while blaming my father's gambling? Security, hired specifically for this moment, materialized at Tyler's elbows as he lunged toward the stage. Emma remained frozen until her sponsor representatives approached her, faces grim. I watched dispassionately as they informed her they were terminating her contract, effective immediately. I left the fundraiser early, ignoring the chaos erupting behind me. That night, I transferred all funds from the accounts Tyler had access to, leaving them empty except for a single penny in each. His increasingly frantic calls went unanswered as I sat in my apartment above the stable office, listening to his voicemails pile up. Ellie, please, you don't understand. Baby, just let me explain. You're making a terrible mistake. I did it for us, for our future. By morning, the locks had been changed on the stable office. Tyler's personal belongings sat in a cardboard box by the main gate. Emma arrived at dawn, eyes red and swollen. She found me in Thunder's old stall, now occupied by a gentle mare I was rehabilitating. How could you? She whispered, voice raw. Everything I worked for, gone. Actions have consequences, I replied, continuing to groom the mare. I never meant for you to get hurt so badly, she insisted, tears spilling down her cheeks. It was just supposed to scare you into withdrawing from Olympic qualifiers. Give me a fighting chance at the spot. So, you loosened the jump standards. She flinched. Not enough to collapse completely, just enough to rattle you, make you lose confidence. I was in a coma for 6 months. That wasn't supposed to happen. She stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Please, Ellie, tell the committee there's been a misunderstanding. I can't lose my sponsorships. Riding is all I have. I looked at her tear-stained face, remembering the girl who'd been my best friend since Pony Club days, who'd slept over at my house the week after my mother died, making sure I ate and showered, who'd been so threatened by my success that she'd risked my life to secure her own advancement. I'm not angry, I told her with perfect calm, stepping away from her reaching hand. I just don't need either of you in my life anymore. Ellie, please. Security will escort you out, I said, nodding to the guard who'd appeared at the stall door. Don't come back. The next attack came from an unexpected quarter, though perhaps it shouldn't have surprised me. Vanessa had always resented my connection with our mother, my inheritance of her talent, and her legacy. My half-sister, the product of Dad's brief first marriage, was 5 years older and infinitely more calculating. I received the court summons 3 weeks after the fundraiser, a petition to have me declared mentally incompetent, unable to manage my inheritance. Vanessa claimed my erratic behavior following the accident indicated psychological instability. She'd even procured a psychiatric assessment suggesting I suffered from delusions and paranoia. It's for your own good, she insisted. When she visited me at the stables afterward, her smile not reaching her eyes. After what you did to Tyler and Emma, Dad's worried you're having some kind of breakdown. Dad put you up to this? I asked, genuinely curious. He'd been keeping a low profile since the fraud revelations. He's concerned, we all are. You've changed since the accident. She wasn't wrong about that. I appeared appropriately fragile at the initial family court hearing, dressed in clothes slightly too large, my hair unstyled. I fumbled dates when questioned, seemed confused about basic financial concepts, reinforcing the image Vanessa was constructing of a traumatized young woman unable to handle her affairs. The judge appointed a court psychologist for an independent evaluation and scheduled a final hearing for the following month. Vanessa was triumphant, already discussing with Dad which horses should be sold first once she had control of my trust. What neither realized was that I'd been recording our conversations since her initial filing, documenting every manipulative interaction. I'd also been seeing Dr. Harriet Chen, a respected neuropsychologist specializing in trauma recovery, who had been documenting my actual mental state for months. The final piece came when I discovered Vanessa's journal in her car during a visit to the stable. Careless of her to leave it there, but Vanessa had always underestimated me. The journal detailed her resentment, her plans to gain control of my inheritance, even her discussions with the psychiatrist who'd provided the questionable assessment. I photographed every relevant page before returning it exactly as I'd found it. My final preparation involved the prestigious Fairchild Equestrian Academy, where Vanessa had applied for an instructor position. An anonymous email expressing concerns about her ethical standards, accompanied by selected journal excerpts, ensured her application would receive extra scrutiny. The final competency hearing arrived on a bright spring morning. Vanessa and Dad sat together on one side of the courtroom, both dressed soberly, expressions grave with concern. I entered alone, but not as they expected. Gone was the fragile girl from the preliminary hearing. I wore a tailored suit, hair neatly styled, posture confident. The judge noticed the transformation immediately, eyebrows rising as I greeted the court, articulate and composed. "Miss Harrington, you seem improved today," he observed. "Yes, Your Honor. I wanted the court to see the difference between my actual state and the performance I gave at the previous hearing. A performance suggested by my sister to help the judge understand my vulnerability." Vanessa's sharp intake of breath was audible across the courtroom. Dr. Chen testified about my excellent mental health, presenting months of evaluation records. Then came the recordings. Vanessa coaching me to act confused for her psychiatrist's evaluation, discussing with Dad how they would protect my assets once the court granted her control. "She'll thank us eventually," Vanessa's voice echoed in the silent courtroom. "Once we've cleaned up the mess she's making of Mother's legacy." I saved the journal excerpts for last. Page after highlighted page of Vanessa's own words. "Ellie's always been Mother's favorite, even from the grave. The accident is actually perfect timing. If I can convince the court she's incompetent, I can finally access what should have been mine anyway." The judge dismissed the case before Vanessa's attorney could even begin his arguments. As we rose at the court's adjournment, Vanessa's phone chimed. I watched her face drain of color as she read the message. The rejection from Fairchild Academy, citing character concerns raised during their background investigation. Outside the courthouse, Vanessa cornered me by my car, swinging between rage and pleading. "You planned this," she hissed, then immediately softened. "Ellie, please, I was just trying to help. You haven't been yourself." "That's true," I acknowledged. "I'm not the same person who went over that jump." "We're sisters," she said, tears welling. "How could you humiliate me like this? Destroy my career prospects?" I studied her face, searching for traces of the girl who'd taught me to braid my hair, who'd snuck me cookies when Dad said I'd gained too much competition weight. The girl who'd later told my first boyfriend I had a contagious skin condition, who'd accidentally deleted my college application essays the day before deadline. "You stopped being my sister when you decided my inheritance was more important than my well-being," I replied calmly, getting into my car. "Family is earned, Vanessa, and you chose not to be mine." Thunder's performance under Maria's training had been nothing short of remarkable. Sequential wins in regional and national competitions culminated in qualifying for the Kentucky Derby, a long-shot entry that became the subject of intense speculation in racing circles. The mysterious owner of Kingsley Farms became a favorite topic in equestrian magazines and racing blogs. Theories abounded. A reclusive tech billionaire, a European aristocrat entering the American market, a syndicate of Hollywood celebrities. No one suspected the truth, that Kingsley Farms was owned by a 24-year-old woman using knowledge from a previous timeline to orchestrate the perfect revenge. As Derby Week approached, I finalized preparations for the revelation I'd been planning for months. The timing had to be perfect, the audience precisely right. My father, now working as a low-level groom at a third-rate stable after his fraud case settled, approached me at the training grounds 2 days before the race. He looked diminished somehow, his confidence eroded, his charm faded to a desperate salesmanship. "Ellie," he began awkwardly, "you look well." "Thank you. I heard your Thunder, is running Saturday." He shuffled his feet. "I wonder if you might be able to get me a ticket." "Nothing fancy, just standing room." "I trained that horse," he added bitterly. "I deserve to see him run." I studied him silently, remembering the father who'd taught me to ride, who'd held me through the nights after Mom died, who'd mortgaged my future for the fleeting high of a winning bet. "Check your email when you get home," I said finally. "There will be something waiting for you." His smile was pathetically grateful. "Thank you, Ellie girl. I knew you couldn't stay angry forever." I didn't correct him. That night, I sent not general admission tickets, but VIP owner's box invitations. To Dad, to Vanessa, to Tyler, to Emma. Each delivered by courier with a personal note requesting their presence for an important announcement regarding Kingsley Farms. Derby Day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of Kentucky spring day that feels like a gift. I dressed carefully in Kingsley colors, the silver horse medallion prominent at my throat. It seemed to pulse against my skin, warm and encouraging. The pre-race owner's reception was a swirl of wealth and prestige. I arrived last, timing my entrance for maximum impact. Conversations paused as I walked in alone, eyes turning to assess the newcomer. Dad stood awkwardly by the bar, looking out of place in his rented suit. Vanessa had positioned herself near a group of racing journalists, clearly hoping to make connections. Tyler and Emma hovered uncertainly near the terrace doors, having schemed together to leverage their invitations after being individually unable to get past security. I approached my father first, watching confusion cross his face as the host greeted me deferentially. "Miss Kingsley, we're honored to have you join us finally. Your box is ready whenever you'd like to proceed." Dad's confusion turned to shock. "Kingsley," he repeated. "I am Kingsley Farms," I confirmed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The room quieted as people turned toward us, suddenly realizing the mysterious owner they'd been speculating about was standing among them. But how? The money? I smiled, gesturing for him to follow me to a quieter corner. Vanessa drifted closer, sensing important information. Tyler and Emma remained frozen by the doors, uncertainty on their faces. After my accident, I discovered I had knowledge I shouldn't have had, I explained quietly. Race outcomes, market movements, events that hadn't happened yet. I touched the medallion at my throat. A gift from my coma, you might say. "That's impossible," Vanessa interjected. "And yet," I gestured around us at the owner's box, the Kingsley Farms banners, the racing forms showing Thunder as the morning line favorite. Quite demonstrably true. I removed a folder from my clutch and handed it to my father. "Documentation of what I've built while you were busy destroying Mother's legacy. Not just Kingsley Farms, but 3 other training facilities across the country, each specializing in rescuing and rehabilitating horses from abusive situations." Dad's hands trembled as he paged through the documents. "This is worth more than you could gamble away in several lifetimes," I finished for him. The medallion around my neck grew noticeably warm, almost glowing beneath my silk blouse. Acting on instinct, I pulled it out for them to see. This appeared after my accident. No one could explain it. The silver horse seemed to shimmer in the light. In my vision during the coma, Mother's spirit gave it to me. She said I was being given a second chance to protect what she loved. "That's crazy," Vanessa scoffed, but her eyes remained fixed on the gleaming pendant. "The accident should have killed me," I continued. "Instead, it gave me clarity about all of you, about what matters." Security approached, indicating a disturbance at the entrance. Tyler and Emma were being escorted out, protesting loudly. "You can't throw us out! We're her family!" Tyler was shouting. They have evidence packets waiting for them, I explained to my father and sister. Documentation of their various crimes and ethical violations. I thought the racing press might find it interesting reading. Vanessa's new boyfriend, a wealthy racing enthusiast I recognized as one of my silent investors, approached, then stopped abruptly when he saw me. Miss Kingsley, he stammered. I didn't realize you were. He looked between me and Vanessa, pieces visibly connecting in his mind. Hello, Richard, I greeted him. I see you've met my sister, a small world. Vanessa's face drained of color as she realized her boyfriend's company was financially entangled with mine. It's almost time, I said, checking my watch. Maria will be bringing Thunder to the paddock soon. Maria Santos? Dad asked weakly. She's not just Thunder's trainer. She's my business partner and the new director of my Foundation for Ethical Equestrian Sports, I confirmed. She was Mother's first choice to take over training after her diagnosis. You should have listened to her. I moved toward the viewing area, leaving them to process what they'd learned. The crowd's energy was electric as the horses paraded to the post. Thunder looked magnificent, coat gleaming like fire in the afternoon sun. Maria sat tall in the saddle, her face serene but focused. The race itself was almost dreamlike. The thunder of hooves, the roar of the crowd, the surging bodies of magnificent animals pushing to their limits. Thunder ran like his heart would burst, like he understood everything that had led to this moment. When he crossed the finish line a length ahead of the field, I felt tears streaming down my face. Not for the victory, but for the completion of a circle. For promises kept to my mother, for a future reclaimed. The presentation ceremony was a blur of flashbulbs and congratulations. I accepted the trophy with Maria beside me, both of us draped in roses, Thunder steaming contentedly behind us. Afterward, my father approached through the crowd, tears in his eyes. I was wrong about everything, he said, voice breaking. The horses, the money, Santos, everything. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to earn it. Let me work with the horses again, even as a groom in your operation. Please, Ellie girl. I looked at him, really looked, seeing the broken man beneath the bluster, the father who had once loved me in his imperfect way. No, I said simply. He blinked, confused. No. Some breaches of trust can't be repaired. I'll make sure you're financially secure, but you'll never work with horses in my organization. But I'm your father. That was an accident of birth. I cut him off gently, just as my second chance was an accident of fate. I'm choosing to use mine better than you used yours. I moved away before he could respond, joining Maria and the celebration team. Tyler cornered me later at the winner's reception, having somehow talked his way past security. His handsome face was flushed with alcohol and desperation. Ellie, baby, you've got to understand. I only took that money to start a business that would benefit us both. I was going to pay it all back and surprise you. He grabbed my hand. We can still have a future together. I love you. I always have. No, I repeated, gesturing to security. My future is already planned, and you're not in it. You can't just throw away what we had, he shouted as guards led him away. 4 years, Ellie, 4 years. 6 months in a coma, I called after him. 6 months you visited only when others were watching. Emma was more subtle, sending a tearful letter that arrived at my hotel suite that evening. She congratulated me on the win, admitted her part in my accident, and offered to publicly take full responsibility in exchange for a position with my foundation. My response was a single word: no. Vanessa appeared at my door personally, makeup perfect despite the late hour, eyes calculating even as she attempted sincerity. We should talk sister to sister, she began. What you've accomplished is incredible. I was wrong to doubt you. Were you? I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting her in. Family is everything, she insisted. Mother would want us to reconcile. I smiled slightly. Family is earned, Vanessa, and you chose not to be mine. People make mistakes. I've changed. So have I. I straightened, preparing to close the door. Goodbye, Vanessa. Oh, you can't just cut us all off. What will people say? That I finally learned to value myself, I answered, closing the door on her protests. 6 months after Thunder's Derby victory, I stood on the cliffs of my coastal property in Ireland, watching new foals run with their mothers on the green hillsides of my latest rehabilitation center. The air tasted of salt and freedom, the wind carrying away the last cobwebs of my old life. Maria joined me, her clipboard tucked under her arm, her face relaxed in a way it never had been at the Harrington stables. Thunder's first offspring are showing remarkable promise, she reported, especially the filly out of Moonstone. She has his intelligence combined with her dam's temperament. Perfect combination. Your mother would be proud, she added, watching the filly execute a perfect sliding stop before galloping back to her dam. I touched the medallion at my neck, feeling its familiar warmth. I think she knows. We walked together along the cliff path, the Irish Sea stretching endlessly before us. Kingsley Farms Ireland was my newest venture, a rehabilitation center for abused and neglected competition horses, combined with a riding academy for underprivileged children. The local community had embraced the project with enthusiasm, particularly after we'd rescued several horses from a bankrupt racing stable nearby. The new physical therapist starts Monday, Maria noted as we descended toward the main complex. She has excellent references from that Paralympic training facility in Germany. I nodded, mentally reviewing the expansion plans. We'd already doubled our capacity since opening, with a waiting list for both the rehabilitation program and the academy. Success felt different here, measured not in trophies or prize money, but in the gradually softening eyes of traumatized horses, in the growing confidence of children who'd never been given a chance. The sun was beginning its descent as we reached the training arena. A young girl, one of our scholarship recipients from a nearby housing estate, was carefully grooming a gentle bay mare, talking softly to her as she worked. "Miss Ellie!" she called excitedly when she spotted me. "Buttercup responded to the new signals today. She's learning to trust again." I smiled, crossing to them and demonstrating the proper technique for the training exercise that they'd been practicing. Buttercup had arrived 2 months earlier, so shut down from abuse, she wouldn't raise her head or make eye contact. Now she gently lipped at my shoulder as I praised her, her eyes clear and curious. "You're doing brilliantly with her, Fiona," I told the girl. "You have natural hands, just like my mother used to say about me." Fiona beamed, her freckled face alight with pride. "Do you think I could be a trainer someday, like Miss Santos? With dedication and heart? Absolutely." As twilight deepened, I sent Fiona home with one of our staff drivers and finished the evening rounds with Maria. The stables were quiet now, horses settled for the night, the only sounds their peaceful breathing and occasional soft nickers. "I'll finish up here," Maria offered. "You've been going since dawn." I thanked her, suddenly feeling the day's fatigue. Before heading to my cottage on the property, I took a detour to the small memorial garden we'd planted for abused horses who couldn't be saved. Stone markers bore their names, flowers grew in carefully tended beds, and a simple bench offered a place for reflection. From my bag, I withdrew the miniature Kentucky Derby trophy, a perfect replica of the original, which remained displayed at Kingsley's American headquarters. I placed it among the forget-me-nots and wild Irish roses, watching as the last light caught its gleaming surface. "Some debts are finally paid," I whispered to the evening breeze. The medallion warmed against my skin in silent agreement as I sat on the bench, breathing in the scent of flowers and sea air. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt truly at peace. The revenge that had driven me forward had served its purpose, not just in punishing those who betrayed me, but in creating something beautiful from that betrayal. The old wounds would always be part of me, scars that had shaped my second life in ways I was only beginning to understand. But they no longer defined me. That was the true victory. I remained in the garden until stars appeared, naming them as my mother had taught me long ago. Then I walked back to my cottage, leaving the trophy among the flowers, a monument not to winning, but to surviving. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rescued horses to rehabilitate, children to teach, facilities to build. I'd face them without the weight of the past dragging at my steps, without the need to prove myself to those who had underestimated me, without anger clouding my vision. Just me, my mother's legacy, and the second chance I'd finally learned how to use. As I reached my cottage door, my phone chimed with a message from the director of the International Equestrian Federation. Proposal approved unanimously. The Catherine Harrington Ethical Training Initiative launches next month. I smiled into the darkness. Some revenge was sweeter when it changed the world. Inside, I added a final entry to the journal I'd kept since awakening from my coma. Today, I became what I was meant to be, not a victim seeking vengeance, but a builder creating justice. The debt is paid, the circle complete. Whatever magic or miracle gave me this second life, I've finally earned it. The medallion at my throat pulsed one last time with warmth, then settled into a steady comfort against my skin. A reminder not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd found. I closed the journal and went to bed, dreaming not of the past but of tomorrow.